this presentation of How Clean is Clean for this year's Texas Ministry Conference. My name is Nathan Parr. I'm a facility specialist with Smart Church Solutions. I've been at this conference many years. Glad to be with you here today as we talk about something that I've been passionate about for many years. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, this last year, 2020, brought this kind of to the forefront for many people. That's not to say people didn't like or want to clean necessarily, but now people understand that there's a good reason to clean. That old adage, wash your hands when you don't feel good, or wash your hands all the time. Moms and dads used to tell us as we grew up. Now we know washing our hands is a good thing, and keeping clean is a good thing. So glad that you're here on this virtual conference because of what's going on. Obviously, we're doing lots of different formats, but glad that we can harness this technology to reach out over kind of the gaps and still connect and have this time together. So I look forward to it. And at the end of the presentation or on the handouts that you have my email address. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, issues, complaints, feel free to reach out. Email me. You don't have to agree with everything I talk about on this presentation, and I feel very strongly about that. You don't have to agree because I feel that everybody has the opportunity and should always have that opportunity to be wrong. So that's one of the jokes. I'll probably have lots of them throughout here. Won't guarantee that any of them will actually be good. Normally, when I'm doing face-to-face, I warn you, I tell jokes. They're not always the best, but if you don't react, they get worse. So we're just going to pretend, and in my mind, I'll at least pretend that you're reacting. And I'll probably point to things. I'll point to the screen as I'm watching it, obviously taking care of my notes, and that's okay. Let's have some fun. I know we're all getting to be old hats at watching virtual and video training sessions. So hopefully this will be a little fun. Hopefully we'll have a little fun and we'll interject through it, and you'll learn from this about how clean is clean. And that's where we're going to go, and we're going to work together and learn together. So as we start, I like to define some terms because a lot of times you'll hear terms thrown around almost interchangeably, and they're not really interchangeable. And that's cleaning and sanitizing and disinfecting and even sterilizing. Okay, those are very important terms when it comes to cleaning. They each talk and relate to very specific functions within the realm of cleaning. They are not the same. In fact, they are four different terms encompassing four different things. So let's look at, if we look at the first one, cleaning. And I'm not going to read everything on the page again. You've got these outlines. You can check them out yourself. But if we talk about cleaning, we're talking about removing dirt and debris. We're talking about the physical act generally of taking something off of a surface, of agitating, of soaking it, of using a soap, something to break the bond of dirt and debris off of the surface, and removing it. That's the first step of pretty much any process. That's why it's kind of, we talk about it first because it's got to happen first. You can't really you can't really do any of the other steps until you clean. And clean doesn't always have to be a wet process. Just the act of sweeping a floor, sweeping the debris, that's cleaning. You're sweeping up debris off the floor before you mop it. Dusting, which not everybody does. Or they certainly don't dust high. Just run your finger across the top of your partition supports, or check out your exhaust fans in your restrooms, and we'll talk about high dusting or the lack thereof. But that's what cleaning is. And so when we talk about cleaning, that's what we mean. The physical removing of debris, dirt, whatever we can remove off of the surface to do that. And it will take a surfactant. Surfactant's a really fun multi-syllable word that means soap. Right? It's something that breaks the bond of whatever you're cleaning. And we're not going to go into the science of cleaning, but, dirt has, it sits on some part of the pH scale. It's either acidic, or basic. And so, acidic or basic, or you get it. There's a pH scale, right? If you're in the middle, you're neutral. Go to one side or the other. You've got more acid or base. So when it comes to those cleanings or those soaps, generally we try to use one that's opposite of whatever dirt debris we're trying to remove. So if we've got a highly acidic stain, then we use something that's basic stain, we use something acidic. That's what breaks the bond between the debris and the surface we're trying to clean. The water isn't cleaning, it's the vehicle that removes. So it suspends the stuff, combines with, suspends the stuff, the water takes it off if we're using water, or it's a dry cleaning process we're sweeping. I know I'm going down the rabbit trail, but this is good stuff. This is what hopefully you're either A, taking back and sharing with your teams, because you're going to train them, and we're going to talk about that too. Or if you're here as a team member, then I hope you're taking this in and understand what you do is rooted in science. It's not just a soft skill that, oh, anybody can do. That's not how it works. What you do is rooted. So take that back. Next is sanitizing. And I use that term next, or as the second term, because the sanitizer is not going to kill everything. It's not going to get rid of all the nastiness around there. Sanitizing, it's primarily used in context with food contact surfaces. Now, to be fair, sanitizers and hand sanitizers, we're hearing that a lot and have heard that a lot. And a lot of them are alcohol-based, which tend to kill just about everything because of the alcohol content, which is why a lot of distilleries were able to step up and produce some hand sanitizer. Unfortunately, I don't know if you all read the article, but several of those distilleries got hit with end-of-the-year tax bills for producing the hand sanitizer because why not? You know, they stepped up and they helped, and our government hit them with a $40,000 tax bill on average. But I digress. But they produce sanitizers as the alcohol-based. But generally, when we're talking sanitizers in facility management or the cleaning in the church facility world, we're talking about those food contact surface rated products that kill a lot of nastiness, especially those microorganisms that cause gastric distress. The bugs, that's what we kill. Those are good, but they're not necessarily going to kill everything, like those hospital nasties, those HIVs, HPVs, those even the coronavirus, things like that. They're not rated to kill that, and they're actually regulated by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and that's who levied those fines against the distilleries, not fines, excuse me, taxes, when they produce that, because they have the authority over what is FDA approved for use as a sanitizer. So it has to go through the process, has to meet all sorts of fun little deals. Once it does, it's good to go, and it's sanitizer. The third one I'm talking about is disinfecting. Now this one, obviously, lots of people have been talking about disinfecting and what it takes to have a good disinfectant and needing a disinfectant with COVID-19, the novel coronavirus 19 throughout this year. And it is like a sanitizer, except for the control issue. And by that, I mean what it's designed to do and kill. It doesn't want to leave anything that it's rated for alive on the surface. Whereas a sanitizer can leave some things alive. The disinfectant doesn't want to leave anything alive. It's also important to remember that with every disinfectant, it's going to have a listed dwell time to be effective against whatever it's going against. Some of the more aggressive ones might have a 30-second dwell time for certain things, or a 2-minute or 3-minute dwell time. Many times you'll see a 10-minute dwell time, and that's a wet dwell time, by the way. So those commercials you see where someone wipes a counter down real quick with a disinfecting wipe, rhymes with Rysol or borax. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Those little wipes. You'll see them, and then they wipe the counter down. Well, if you read the package, most of those are going to tell you to be effective, it's got to remain wet on the surface for 5-10 minutes. And if you've used those wipes, most of us, myself included, when we use those wipes, we use them way to try to cover too much surface area. So we're wiping, and it's no longer wet. It's just basically we're a damp rag by the time we're done with it. Well, we've not actually disinfected any surface. We've merely cleaned it at that point. There may be some things that have died and killed, so maybe it's a quasi-sanitizer at that point, but it's not disinfecting like it's designed to and like it's guaranteed to, unless you allow it to remain on the surface for its recommended dwell time. And it's wet. So you have to pay attention to that. And when you're mixing these disinfectants, a lot of people are now buying them in bulk and mixing them down. Hopefully you're using a dilution control system. We'll talk a little bit about equipment later. But hopefully you're using one of those so it's actually being measured out accurately. And hopefully you're using a test kit to make sure that the parts per million you're supposed to get is actually present in the item. That's the only way that, again, you can guarantee that what you're saying your disinfectant is going to do is actually doing it. And with the COVID-19, EPA developed a list in which lists all of those disinfectants that have been shown to be effective against or assumed or presumed to be effective against the novel coronavirus 19. Some of them, they can't say that they are effective. They're saying have shown to be effective against similar types of. Just begin, there's a whole testing process that you have to go through. There's like 30 or 40 different certifications that these products go through to be on this an EPA registered disinfectant. And it takes millions of dollars and several years. So there are some things that are out there now that people are using, like hypochloric acid generators and things. And I'm not going to badmouth them. I'm not going to say anything negative against them. I'm going to say that from a legal or liability standpoint, I have no documentation that I can point to that I could hand to somebody and say, hey, here's everything that this is guaranteed or has been shown by some sort of governmental regulatory agency that this will be effective. For some, that may not be a huge concern. For others, that obviously is. We've had those. If you've ever had a daycare or a private school or even just childcare at your facility, you've probably run into at least one time where a parent wants to know, what are you cleaning the classroom with? My kid got sick. What's going on? And I personally think it's a good idea to be able to hand them documentation that is certified by some sort of approving body. So that being said, disinfectant, as I'm mentioning, this is done by the EPA. The EPA is the governing body for disinfectants. Why? Because they're pesticides. They're designed to kill living organisms. That's why they're defined as a pesticide. And so that's why the EPA has that, and the FDA does the sanitizers. And then finally, sterilizing. When you sterilize something, nothing lives. Everything is dead. It's gone. Most organizations, and we'll talk about this, we're not actually sterilizing, but you'll see it if medical offices, dental offices, they'll have autoclaves, things like that. So when we say sterilize, we mean nothing lives. So those sealed packages of items again, especially medical communities, that's why you'll see a lot of sterilization. So those are the four terms that, as a facility professional, facility steward, who is responsible for cleaning, or at least responsible for who's ever responsible for cleaning, those four terms you need to understand and use them correctly. Cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, and sterilizing. The fourth one you're probably not going to do. And if someone says, we've sterilized the room, no, they haven't. But it does need to be cleaned, and some things need to be sanitized, some things need to be disinfected. And to be clear, not everything may require to be disinfected. Many times sanitizing is going to be okay. I'm not going to tell you what those are. You'll have to make that determination as an organization. But at some point, with everything that we do for right now, COVID-19, and then in the next couple of years, whatever else comes out. When I was an operations manager, it was Ebola. There's going to be something coming up later. There's always going to be something. So we have to make sure that whatever we institute is actually trainable and sustainable and realistic. That's very important. Probably realistic is the most important thing. You can't tell your team, I need you to disinfect the worship center in between services and only give them 10 minutes between services to do it. That's not going to work. If you think it's actually being disinfected, that you're telling yourself a lie, and you're telling everybody that comes into your building a lie when you tell them, yeah, we disinfect in between services. No, you don't. It takes time. There's a process. It has to be cleaned and then disinfected. We'll get into that. So it's important, know the terms and be honest to yourself and to others about your process and if it actually is realistic in what you say it does. Cleaning. Kind of mentioned this. This is step one-ish, okay? Because most everything needs cleaned first. I'm not going to sit there and hit you over the head and say, I'm not going to do that. So step one-ish. And again, that's removing this visible dirt, debris, marks, stains, whatever, off of the surface. First thing is if there's dirt, old napkins, whatever, on the surface, and you spray it with a disinfectant, that's going to keep the disinfectant from getting down to the long-term or the primary surface, the chair, the table, whatever. All that dirt, you're quote, disinfecting the top of the dirt, but not underneath it. It sounds silly. Even talking about it, it sounds ridiculous, right? But if you're not cleaning before you apply sanitizer or disinfectant, you're skipping step one. So how clean is clean? If you don't clean, it's not clean. Seems pretty simple. Consider that almost the surface prep. As we talk about this kind of complete or holistic approach to cleaning your facility, your building, however you want to look at it, just like with painting, just like with doing carpentry, doing woodworking, refinishing, if you skip surface prep, the end result is not going to be as good as it could. In fact, it's not going to be very good at all. It's not going to last, and you're going to end up redoing it again and again and again and again, because if the substrate, if the primer coat, if the base is not sound, is not good, is not well maintained, everything you apply on top of it is basically adding good things over bad. So cleaning is the first, and there's a great way to visualize this. I think it's a great way. Even my wife kind of thought it was a great way. So that means it's not too extreme, because she is good about keeping me on the level here. So let's look at a common item we're all kind of familiar with. That toilet is nasty, right? I don't know what's on it. We're going to pretend it's just dirt and debris. But that's a dirty toilet. That's something that really does need to be disinfected. However, remember, a disinfectant or disinfecting step, there's a first step, and that's a cleaning. That's a removal of the debris. Now, to be fair, I'm using this visual because it hits home. The reality is, many times if you've got the right chemical to clean your restroom, it's going to be a low to non-acid disinfectant bowl cleaner or bathroom cleaner designed for the restroom. Many times the acid or the surfactant, the soap in it, combined with all the cleaning chemicals, you can spray it on, let it sit, its dwell time, and then wipe it down with a rag or brush that's been dipped in the same acid cleaner, because that's not considered a food contact surface. Obviously, we don't need a secondary rinse. We can scrub it down. We're good to go. But it's the same concept with our tables and chairs. We need to clean all that debris off before we attempt to sanitize or disinfect. So we scrub and we clean that down, then we apply the disinfectant. So we get all that dirt and grime and nastiness off, because technically, and hear me out, I could spray down a toilet that looks like that and saturate it with disinfectant, with the highest level disinfectant I want, and let it sit completely soaked for the 10-minute dwell time that it takes. And I could honestly walk out of the restroom at that point and say, that toilet is disinfected. Is that what you want in your facility? Because it is disinfected. That's what everybody's talking about right now. We have to disinfect. If I sprayed it down, let it soak for 10 minutes, that would be disinfected. But is it clean? Obviously not. It hasn't been cleaned because the debris has not been removed. So that's why, again, we have to be very intentional with the words and what they mean. We need to clean before we disinfect. That is a very important step. Almost time for a palate cleanser, right? But I don't have I should have put in a picture of two cats playing with yarn or something. Instead, let's just move on to sanitizing. Obviously, after that picture, it's good to talk about what we typically do on, food contact surfaces. Sanitizing, that's in the realm of step 2 or maybe step 2 adjacent. Meaning, after step one, obviously I'm a big proponent of you gotta clean. But after step one, you might go ahead and go to step three, using the third thing, using a disinfectant. You may not need a sanitizer. But many times it's going to be in the realm of step two adjacent, or it might be kind of step three because you're going to go to the disinfectant and then use it as your secondary rinse, which we'll talk about in the process. So, food contact surfaces, that's the primary thing that we talk about when we talk about sanitizing, as you think about it. Something that if it was wet and a child came and touched it, or an adult, because we all do this, touched it, got it on their hands, and then put it on their mouth after they took their mask off, because they're probably wearing a mask, but they did. They put it on there without washing their hands first. Is it going to make them sick? A FDA-approved sanitizer is not. It's not going to cause them to be sick. It's designed to treat those vegetative cells that produce, like I said, internal gastric or distressing type issues, things that make you sick. We hear about food poisoning. We hear about, oh, I ate that, I can't come to work today. We've probably, if you've been a manager at any time, you've probably heard, hey, I ate something bad last night, I can't come to work today. Okay, that's what sanitizers are for. Hopefully, whatever food services, and now with all of our call orders and food deliveries and things, hoping their kitchens and their cars and everything else is being cleaned and sanitized. We're just going to assume. But that's what keeps us healthy from a public health standpoint, keeps us healthy and not getting sick. They're typically not as harsh as disinfectants, and most of the time they will not have a surfactant in it, a soap, because a soap can cause issues for an individual that a sanitizer won't. So as a second step, again, cleaning it with a product that has a soap, a surfactant in it, and then using the sanitizer. That's the process. That's kind of what we go through, and that's where we're at. They'll have an FDA number. Again, find the FDA number. You should see it, because I'm sure all of us are maintaining a proper safety data sheet book in our facility that has the cover page and every chemical that we're using in alphabetical order on the cover page, and then everything listed there, all of the proper SDS sheets in the book, right? I'm sure we're all doing that. It's relatively safe. Again, if you have incidental ingestion, don't go drinking the sanitizers, right? Don't leave it in a huge puddle on a table and say, hey, it would be fine if the kids want to play in it. But it's probably not going to hurt them in a typical or realistic amount left on the surface. And again, cleaning versus sanitizing. I'm gonna keep hammering this home. If we're cleaning, we're removing dirt from the surface. We're removing stuff from the surface. Sweeping, wiping, rinsing, right? Using soap, we're removing stuff. And sanitizing is treating here is the most important thing, treating a clean surface with an antimicrobial product in order to reduce or eliminate microorganisms. Read that right off the slide. I told you I wouldn't, and now I just went and did it. But that's what it's for. That's what it does. Okay, so clean, then sanitize on the appropriate surfaces. What are the appropriate surfaces? Well, generally you're going to see a sanitizer used as either the second step or as a rinse for step 3, which foreshadowing, we'll talk a little bit of that, on food contact surfaces. So tables in classrooms, preschool rooms, kitchen areas, your tables in your gyms that you've set up for potluck and then tear down. Anywhere that you're going to be eating or drinking. Your Sunday school rooms, maybe those tables need to be sanitized. So they probably should be cleaned first. By the way, sidebar, done a lot of facility condition assessments this year. Not 21, but in 2020 we did. One thing I noticed, especially with folks not meeting as much in the building, I found a lot of coffee makers in adult classrooms that hadn't been cleaned out in a long time. Not just because people weren't meeting, but even before, they were pretty nasty. So when we talk about cleaning and sanitizing, don't forget those random coffee pots, coffee makers that show up in classrooms throughout your building or areas. I would recommend getting a handle on that and cleaning that, because that's a great place for stuff grow and come out and not be cool. For those that are still serving or prepping coffee, of course, with everything going on with transmission, COVID, things like that, maybe it's easier to just encourage people to stop at their local coffee shop before they come to service. So let's look at disinfecting, which is step 3 or 2, but never 1. We're not going to start with disinfecting. We're not going to do that. Anytime you think, oh, I want to start with disinfecting, or I can do disinfecting without doing step 1, I want you to think of that toilet. That's nasty. Think of that. Don't do it. So again, it's like sanitizing, except for this control issue. Disinfectants have a big control issue. They don't want anything to be on the surface that they're on. They want to kill everybody out. They at least they want to kill everything that they're rated for, right? In a wet dwell time, we've talked about that, 30 seconds to 10 minutes. Again, I've seen products with 30-second dwell time to kill lots of things. A lot of times, the average seems to be between 7 and 10 minutes for a wet dwell time, which kind of brings to the forefront when we're talking about disinfecting and the application thereof of disinfecting. It's very difficult to fully saturate the entire surface area of anything with the trigger sprayer. You think about it, you've got a 30 by 72 plastic top table, which is very common. To fully saturate that at a level that would allow that tabletop to remain wet, say for a 7-minute dwell time with a trigger sprayer, one, it's going to take about a quarter of the liquid in that trigger sprayer. 2, it's about, I don't know, I didn't count it when I tried it, but it's, over 100 times per table. Now think if you set out 12 tables for an event, and you're going to spray the trigger sprayer 1,200 times plus refill it 4 times. Not really practical. So that's where using microfiber cloths, saturated, dipped, or dipped in a cleaning solution, used one time and then thrown in the dirty rag bucket, or even a pump sprayer, sounds kind of crazy, but getting that onto the surface in the amount it needs to have the wet dwell time. You've got to think about that. You've got to take that in. It's not a quick process. I'm getting on a soapbox a little bit. Soapbox cleaning. You need time to clean effectively and to clean appropriately. If you are hearing this and you are over the cleaning team, and maybe you're part of the executive staff that has that, or maybe you can share this with the executive staff, you need time in between events to clean. If you are not scheduling your events with enough time to clean properly, to include disinfecting surfaces as required, that's an issue. And that's an issue that you're bringing on yourself, because you can separate things out. You can tell people, no, we can't do that, because we have to separate it out. If COVID-19 told us anything, it was that we can say no, and we can get a lot done with less. But as we go back, you've got to give yourself the time to clean. And that means cleaning the stuff, then disinfecting, allowing yourselves to apply, saturate the product for as long as it needs for that wet dwell time, and then resetting the room. That's got to happen. You've got to give yourself enough time. If you are flipping rooms with anything, even 60 minutes or less, depending on size of the room, you're probably not cleaning like you should. And you don't have a clean building like people are expecting, or you should be expecting at this time. So I'll get off my soapbox at this point. Disinfectant, when you talk about it, there's a couple different things or terms you might see on the disinfectant or on the SDS sheet, which again, I know that you're all keeping. It can be tested and rated as a bactericide because it'll kill bacteria, a viricide, it'll kill viruses, fungicide, which kills funguses, or a mildewcide, which kills mildew, right? Pretty straightforward. Many of them are rated for multiple things. You just have to read the label and see what it's rated for to be able to say this is what I can do. Again, the EPA, because it's a pesticide, it's not good. It requires, because it's a pesticide, it requires a secondary rinse on surfaces that are likely to be food contact surface, or, and this is very important, it doesn't have to be just a food contact surface, it's just a surface that someone is likely to touch and then potentially incur incidental ingestion. How many of us have pews? How many of us have walked into a pew or wood pew to get to the middle of it? How many of us touch the top of the pew as we're walking and slide our hands down there? probably everybody. If we're raising our hands, which is going to look silly if you're all watching this at home, we've all done it. I've done it. We touched the chairs. What are we doing right now in between services? We're spraying down all the pews with tools, either foggers or electrostatic sprayers. What is it doing? It's depositing a disinfectant. If we're flipping that space and not giving it the right time, and there's still moisture, still wetness on top of those things, as people enter, they're touching it to their hands, then they reach up. If you allow them to take their masks off when they're seated, they're putting their hands near their mucous membranes, right? That's potential incidental ingestion. It's an extreme, but also think of your tables. You disinfect your tables from a lunch. You don't just put them away. You need to do a secondary rinse because, again, that's a food contact surface. You want to get that. That's where the sanitizer becomes a step 2 adjacent. So I can clean a table, for example, clean it really well, apply my disinfectant, letting it sit the proper dwell time. And then as a secondary rinse, a lot of times these disinfectants for a secondary rinse are going to ask you or tell you to rinse with fresh water. Or you could take your microfiber rags and your bucket of cleaner and you could rinse and wipe down that secondary rinse with your sanitizer. Using that to do the secondary rinse. Now it's got sanitizer on the surface, but the sanitizer, it's FDA approved for food contact surface. So if somebody touches it, gets it, it's okay. That's something to consider as you look and as you do this program properly. That's a big important thing. It's got to be proper. It's got to be correct. Otherwise, why are you doing it? There you go. So that's a secondary rinse. And again, EPA for COVID, the type list in. You can just EPA list in, type that into any search bar. It's going to take you to those things. When you see the EPA number on your disinfectant, you type in that number to the search bar on list in, and it will tell you if that's been approved or if that's been approved for use against coronavirus, novel coronavirus 19. If it's not, don't use it. Find something else. Pretty simple, straightforward. Again, concentration and dwell time when we're talking about disinfectant. That's super, super, super important. So again, when you're planning out how clean is whatever time it takes you to clean plus whatever time it takes you to apply the disinfectant plus dwell time plus secondary rinse in many cases equals minimum time required just for the cleaning, disinfecting, and rinsing part. Then you add in how long does it take it for me to reset the room and set up for the next event. So again, give yourself time. If disinfectants, they must be used properly. There's no way around it. If they're not used properly, you're not providing the safest facility. And by safest, I mean reduced potential exposure, right? Because you can't, and you're more than likely not going to be able to do everything unless you wanted to create the safest church facility as possible, which would actually be pretty easy, and that's just shut the doors, never open again, and then you won't have this issue because nobody will be there, right? So obviously that's not practical, but we can't do everything, but we can do a lot of things. We can hit those high contact areas, high touch areas, all the door handles, phones. Check out our website that has all of the things to look at and to touch, the checklist. If you've got a preschool area and you're using microfiber flat mops, for example, you can take that disinfectant and cleaner and you can flip them up on their side and clean from about 32 inches down on the walls where the little kids rub their hands on their nose and walk and touch the walls and get all that stuff clean. So there you go. Little fun tips there. Again, I'll be here all week. Not really, I'll be here as long as you download this video. Sterilization, that's the are you kidding me step. Because very seldom are we actually going to sterilize. If someone says, I need to sterilize the room, you can't. Don't. Nothing remains alive, and then it stays sealed until you're ready to use it so that nothing alive can get back on there. You're probably not going to sterilize unless you're in a specific industry, nor will you need to. An exception that I have seen and I was responsible for, some childcare facilities, they may have a boosted hot water washer to sterilize stuff. And when I say boosted, I mean it's boosted to ridiculous levels, like, oh my goodness, it will, melt your skin off type levels. Or they use bottle washers or things like that, but it's not common. We look at here, here's some common, tabletop sterilizers that you might see, like an autoclave and stuff. The one there on your left, that one you could get for the low price of $9,000 used for that tabletop disinfectant. The one on the right is a small bottle washer. That's only a couple $100. Sterilizer, rather. So when we talk about these things, they are just ridiculous in terms of how much they can cost, and go from there. Big question. We talked about a lot of things. So what? Okay. This information means absolutely nothing if it's not combined with a proper cleaning program. Improper use of these chemicals in your facility is potentially more or is just as or more dangerous, potentially, than doing nothing, using the wrong chemicals or using chemicals improperly. And a team, if they're not equipped and trained, that's a false sense of security in the facility. Oh, it's cleaned. Oh, it's disinfected. Oh, if they don't know what they're doing, it's probably not. So what does a proper program have? Simple. Right equipment, right chemicals, proper training, correct staffing level, and enough time, there's that time again, to perform the process correctly. So what the heck is a training program when I talk about that? Because that's when I got deer in the headlights. Training program, it's going to include, number one, a class on the hazardous communication standard. Why? Because you should be giving that to your team, and that's when you'll know the importance of having the proper SDS and everything else. It's also going to need instruction on the science of cleaning, to include the types of soils you're going to deal with, the types of water, because that can affect your cleaning, the pH of soils and the chemicals and how they interact. We talked about that, use the opposite to work. Proper PPE, which is personal protective equipment. Chemical selection and usage, right chemical for the job. Understanding of proper use of equipment, to include preventative maintenance. That is huge. And follow-on training on the process for each type of cleaning. And training on dealing with potentially infectious material cleaning or cleanup. Biohazard, okay? The fun stuff. You get the call from the preschool. You know what I'm talking about. That's a specific training, has specific rules under OSHA. Learn it and understand it. Any and all chemicals work, right? Just whatever we grab off the shelf. No. The goal is to reduce the number of chemicals in our facility. One, that's a more green approach. Two, it's a more economical approach. So what do we need at a minimum? We're going to need a listed EPA disinfectant, a list N off of list N. Some of those disinfectants will have a surfactant in it, a soap, so you can use it kind of as the initial 1+2 step. You want more on that, email me, I'll talk to you about it. An FDA listed sanitizer for sanitizing and for a secondary rinse. A glass or a multi-surface cleaner. I like hydrogen peroxide based ones. A low to non-acid restroom disinfectant. Several of those are also listed under the EPA list N. Toilet bowl cleaner, because if you've got hard water, you got to scrub stuff. General purpose cleaner degreaser, especially for the maintenance team, stuff to just clean up those random spills. And items to support potentially infectious material cleanup, specifically an absorbent powder that forms a gel when exposed to a liquid. Those are great. Sprinkle it on there, forms a gel, so on and so forth. There's a whole process with that. Be glad to work with your team and train them. Let me know. And if you know equipment, you know cleaning. If you don't know equipment, you don't know cleaning. Play on words, but there you go. Proper equipment. That's how we increase our efficiency and effectiveness while reducing the overall long-term expenses, right? Use microfiber mops, dust mops, wiping cloths, dusters, everything microfiber. I like using a color-coded system of rags. Certain rags do certain things. That's what I teach. That's what I train on. HEPA filters on your vacuum cleaners, things like that, using backpack vacuums. Add mechanization wherever possible, like auto scrubbers or extractors. Replace that broken, worn equipment sooner rather than later. Buy commercial rated equipment. Invest in that equipment. Don't go down to the local box store or the you know what I'm talking about. Don't go to those stores. The big blue lettering on the side. to get a vacuum cleaner when it breaks. Invest in proper vacuum cleaners that can be maintained properly, can be PM'd and taken care of. And then obviously electrostatic sprayers, that's huge. Many of us have them now. There was a big lull for manufacturing to catch up when everybody wanted them. Electrostatic sprayers, obviously, as the chemical comes through, it's charged. So all the particles are charged so that when they hit the surface, they automatically distribute themselves evenly across the surface, allowing you to ensure that the surface is fully covered with your disinfectant. That's why electrostatic sprayers are great. Let's talk about process. Without a cleaning process, your facility will never be maintained as well as it should. Process. It's written down. It's not just how I clean my house. It's got to be written down, and it's got to be a procedure that can be trained, and then folks can be held accountable for. Training and accountability, they're a must. You've got to ensure it's being followed. It doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be complete, right? Simple is good as long as simple covers all the needs. And once you have it, this process written down, everyone on the team should always have access to it. So here's an example of a cleaning process card. Again, it's not super crazy. Step 1 through 9. And 9 is clean all the equipment, return to storage, pick up the wet floor signs you put out, right? So you've got the handouts, boom, there you go. That's that. It dictates the step number, the process, and the equipment needed for each step. If someone's cleaning, I can ask them, okay, you're on step 3, what do you need? They need a duster. That's what a process card doesn't need to be difficult. And then obviously some of these additional technologies that we have that we need to take advantage of. UVC, HVAC, electrostatic sprayers, ozone generators, ionizing air cleaners, and then additional filtration options. These things can help clean those particles in our facilities. We're not going to go deep into there. Email me again if you'd like to talk more. I will say some of this technology is very expensive, especially the UVC. And while it is effective under the correct conditions, be careful with investing in that until you are sure that you can maintain it properly and have the proper maintenance done on it and do those things. So there you go. That's what I have. How clean is clean? Well, clean is only as clean as you make it. So hopefully this will help. Some of the basics, some of the start. I appreciate y'all spending some time with me. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, the rest of the sessions. And again, my name is Nathan Parr with Smart Church Solutions. I'm glad to be with you today.